Hello? Hello? Hi, good evening. Can you all hear me well? Is this working? Okay, great. Thank you all for wrestling the afternoon traffic to be here with us this evening. Delighted to have you all. My name is Natalie. I'm the Advancing Net Zero Program Coordinator for the MENA region at the World Green Building Council. And we are excited to have you all here to kick off our MENA Net Zero Readiness Framework. So before I get started, now that I've introduced myself, we would like to get to know who's here with us in the room. So if you guys could just please scan this QR code and let us know. So I guess I was only privy to this for the first 5 minutes, but now you all get a little taste of who's here with us in the room, maybe some intel for your networking after this. There you go. All right. Oh, we're still going. Okay, yeah, I think we've got such an interesting diversity of people here in the room. Exciting to have you all here, and we look forward to working with you. Now that we know who's here, we'd like to know how well you are familiar with the concept of net zero. It's a little quiz, nothing too serious. Right. We've got a very well-versed net zero crowd in here. That's exciting. Hopefully we'll have something new to share with you. Couple people who don't know what we're talking about, but it's lovely to have you here as well. Okay, thank you all for participating in this. And yes, ooh, we have a tie. All right, I will be introducing our next speaker. We have Victoria Burrows from the World Green Building Council, the Director of Advancing Net Zero. Please welcome to the stage, Victoria.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes, hi everyone. Well, my name is Victoria. I'm the Director of Advancing Net Zero from the World Green Building Council. I'm delighted to be here with you today in Dubai, but also this week with all of the events that we have convening our Green Building Councils from across our Middle East and North Africa region. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our program, but first, let's talk about why we're here. The current data, or the most recent data that we have, tells us that the global building stock and building and construction sector is responsible for 37% of energy-related emissions, 34% of global energy demand, and more than half of materials consumption, and a huge contributor to waste and landfill. Of 192 countries that have submitted nationally determined contributions, there are 158 who have mentioned buildings in their NDCs, and that's progress. We're seeing that number go up. 118 refer to energy efficiency as part of their emissions reduction strategy. It's actually one of the second highest mentioned measures in terms of addressing emissions, which again is really promising progress. We have 79 countries who have adopted energy codes. So that number's a little low compared to 192. And of where we're expecting growth to occur by 2060, we're actually expecting the world's building stock to double between now and 2060. 60% of those markets lack any mandatory energy codes at all. This is where that growth is expected to happen. The dark blue dots are telling us what's going to happen over time. Telling us what we know in terms of what's happened over time until now, and is expected to sort of increase until 2030. The sort of lighter blue dots are showing the progression between 2030 and 2040. And then the really light is from 2040 to 2060. And so you can see that the majority of existing building stock is centralized in Asia, in North America, and in Europe. But the majority of that stock we're going to see increasing from Africa and Southeast Asia. And as I say, in some markets with no energy codes whatsoever. So we are knowingly creating buildings that we need to retrofit in the future. And we have a huge amount of existing stock that needs to be improved in order to improve those emission numbers, but also the impact that our buildings have on our lives. So the World Green Building Council is the world's largest and most influential global, regional, and local action network leading the transformation to a more sustainable built environment. We're pleased to have a network of around 75 national green building councils, some of them in the room today. Put your hands up if you're from a GBC. Yes, welcome. And we're convening many of those from the Middle East and North Africa this week, especially here in Dubai. With those councils, we're working to accelerate market transformation to address whole life carbon emissions from our buildings, both existing and new, to enable the creation of resilient, more healthy, equitable, and inclusive spaces and places, and to secure regenerative, circular, and resource-efficient infrastructures. We know that systemic change is needed, and it's needed now. And we are working across 3 critical impact areas of climate action, which is where advancing net zero sits and the work that I look after, resources and circularity, and health and well-being and social equity. And we've set our mainstream goals for those challenges. And for advancing net zero, that means nothing less than accelerating total sector decarbonisation by 2050. We do that with advancing net zero by working at events like this to increase the awareness of both the urgency, but also the achievability of net zero carbon buildings. We work to achieve alignment and commonality across all the different schemes and approaches, the advocacy calls to action, the models and programs that green building councils put out, and their certification schemes, many of which now mark or are able to verify if a building's achieving net zero, and to expedite uptake in global markets by sharing market leadership examples. We have a framework, our whole life carbon vision framework from advancing net zero, and we set this at a global level for World Green Building Council, and it's then applied in various ways across the regions and across the national GBCs. And it's combining the 2 concepts of operational carbon and embodied carbon. So of course, operational carbon being the energy or the carbon emissions associated with the energy used in buildings use. So how we're using energy to light them, cool them, heat them, power them. And the most important principle here is to focus on energy efficiency. So reducing and optimizing our energy demand, and then meeting that remaining energy balance with renewable energy sources. We also need to compensate for residual emissions, and at World GBC, we believe that offsets are a necessary part of the transition to a net zero economy. And we need to plan for deep decarbonisation, including the renovation and transition from fossil fuels of our existing buildings. And for embodied carbon, the same approach applies. So reduce first, in fact, prevent first. Prevent embodied carbon from occurring at all. That's the emissions from construction processes, extracting materials, producing materials, and how we put the building together. We can prevent those emissions from optimizing the opportunities to renovate existing buildings. And if we do need to build new, look at opportunities to reduce embodied carbon through design measures like lean construction or fossil fuel-free construction, and optimize the emissions from embodied carbon by looking at alternative materials and how to reduce the amount of materials in the building itself. And we can also plan for the future. We can think about how buildings can be optimized for reuse, for adaptability and versatility over their lifetime. and buildings that can be designed for disassembly, taken apart like Lego models, and those materials reused in the future. And again, compensation for residual emissions, it's something we simply can't avoid as we continue to build buildings. So we as World GBC are calling for, at a mainstream level, by 2050, all buildings to be net zero operation, and all buildings to be net zero embodied carbon, including infrastructure projects and renovations. By 2030, that all new buildings are operationally net zero, and that they're achieving at least a 40% reduction in embodied carbon. And I actually heard from someone I was meeting with last night that there are projects already here in the Middle East that are able to achieve reduction measures of 40% and higher today, so not even 2030. But it is a huge ask of us from the sector. It requires a complete transformation in the way that we treat our buildings, value them, design them, and occupy them. So we also have a net zero carbon buildings commitment, which asks businesses and cities to achieve that 2050 date, but by 2030. So existing buildings are reducing energy consumption, eliminating emissions, and also from refrigerants, and that new developments and major operations achieve maximum reductions in embodied carbon and offsetting the remaining emissions from 2030. And what we're learning from those commitment signatories is really important. It helps us understand the sorts of business models and tools and technologies that we need for the entire sector to achieve that 2050 goal. And I'm pleased to say that not only are there commitment signatories right here in the Middle East, there's also some in the room I've seen. So put your hands up, JLL, ICD Brookfield, those who are signatories to the commitment. Excellent, thank you very much. We really appreciate your leadership demonstrating what's possible right here in the region. So I mentioned Green Building Councils taking that framework of those dates, those definitions, those principles, and pulling that into what it means for their markets. And we have resources that Green Building Councils are producing all over the world to help their members understand what net zero means in different situations, different contexts, different climates. And so we have roadmaps from the likes of Australia and the UK, Poland, several markets in Europe actually. There are rating tools such as Lead Zero, such as the Zero Energy tool from Brazil and Green Star South Africa. And there's also ideas competitions from Hong Kong GBC. There's guidance that comes out from Emirates GBC. It's all taking that vision and applying it to what it means to achieve net zero in a local context. And this is important because we know that the majority of Green Building Council members are businesses. And as businesses, you have a really important role in what's known as the ambition loop. We simply cannot wait for regulation and policymakers to solve this problem for us. It's too big and it's too complex. But the ambition loop is all about different parts of the value chain and key stakeholders taking steps forward that support each other in a sort of mutually reinforcing. So front-runner businesses like signatories to the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Commitment make commitments, make announcements about it, publicly talk about what they're doing. That helps create confidence in policymakers to think about what frameworks and roadmaps to net zero might look like. Those roadmaps create confidence in investors to start looking at what solutions we need for a net zero economy and accelerate and facilitate that investment. And in turn, that creates more confidence in governments to create those policy frameworks and so on and so on. So the businesses and the network of around 44,000 companies across our Green Building Council network are really important in helping to demonstrate what's possible and drive towards higher and more ambitious regulations that we need for that action to be taken at scale. And lastly, I have to mention COP28. Last week at an event, we heard Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak tell us that COP28 is going to be a COP for action, because not because we want the limelight for UAE, but because we simply have no choice. And we're here today to celebrate the work in the Middle East and North Africa region to help create a legacy, but also drive the vision of advancing net zero into a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and I hope she was able to inspire you to start your own ambition loop, maybe in your organization, maybe within your day-to-day life. Next up, we have Nadine Abroude, the Built Environment Associate of the High Level Climate Champions team, to speak to you about the Race to Zero. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. So I'm Nadine Abroude. I'm a part of the Climate Champions Built Environment team, which is Climate Champions are led by Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak and Dr. Mahmoud Mahideen, who are the COP27 and COP28 climate champions, respectively. So today's focus is the Race to Zero campaign, which is one of the main focuses of our work as climate champions. So this is a global campaign rallying non-state actors. This includes companies, cities, regions, financial, educational, and healthcare institutions to take rigorous and immediate action to deliver a healthier and a fairer net zero world. So this campaign was established in June 2020, and since then, around 11,000 members have joined and are committed to the same overarching goal, which is reducing emissions across all scopes in line with the Paris Agreement. This means halving emissions by 2030 and reaching net zero by 2050, by no later than 2050. And this includes Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions. Now, aligning to the Paris Agreement goals means pursuing efforts to stay below 1.5 degrees Celsius to significantly reduce the risks and impacts of climate change. And hence the 2030 and 2050 goals. And this also includes enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reducing vulnerability to the existing climate change impacts. Now, these are some of the organizations that are already a part of the campaign. You probably see a lot of familiar names, both globally and regionally, and they are leaders in the built environment sector. And they've been showcasing a lot of good action and influencing the rest of the stakeholders. Now, what is the mission of this campaign? The objective is to build momentum around the shift to a decarbonized economy ahead of COP28 and ahead of other COP conferences. As a result, building this momentum and demonstrating action sends a signal to national governments that, you know, all these non-state actors, businesses, cities, regions, and investors are united together in meeting the Paris goals and creating a more inclusive and resilient world. In terms of the progress of the campaign, as you can see, the membership has almost doubled since September 2021, with a large 30% increase specifically in the Asia Pacific region. You know, momentum is continuing to build. Just in the past year, we've seen over 5,000 new non-state actors join and demonstrate action, which represent around 116 countries. And as you can see, in all corners of the world, non-state actors are taking actions and are helping to drive a holistic response to the climate crisis. Now, so what is the criteria of this campaign and how do actors actually join it? So the criteria is focused around the 5 Ps, which are pledge, plan, proceed, publish, and persuade. So as an actor, first you have to pledge and commit. And as soon as you commit to a certain pathway within the campaign, you have around 12 months to plan and set your targets. And once that's set and publicly announced, you start taking action and start showcasing and influencing the sector. And as a result, there's a requirement to report on the progress annually. And lastly, as a result of this action, this is actually one of the new P's that was added, which is persuade, which means aligning policy and engagement with halving emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So like I said, sending a signal to the national governments to improve the regulations and show that, you know, there is an appetite for decarbonizing the sector. Now, there are different pathways to joining the Race to Zero campaign, and this is done through partner initiatives. So these are kind of like funnels through which actors can join, and these partner initiatives provide support and guidance for members on how to commit to credible climate targets and how to take action against these goals. And these partner initiatives are separated based on actor type, sectors, as well as regions. The most common one that a lot of actors in the sector sign up to is the SBTI. Yeah. Now, moving on to the benefits of participation. So, as you can see already, setting these targets and committing to taking action in the sector aligns your business strategy with low carbon economy and anticipates the risks that are coming ahead, as well as identifies opportunities that are necessary to transition to a low carbon economy. And in addition to that, this builds, credibility, investor confidence, as well as company brand and reputation. And as a result of all this action, this sends a signal to policymakers that there is an appetite, like I previously mentioned, for decarbonizing the sector, and that can help governments scale up their climate ambition. And lastly, when actors do join the campaign, they are a part of a continuous community that has a lot of knowledge sharing and provides support and guidance along the way. And now moving on to the built environment sector. So as a built environment team, we're responsible for engaging the stakeholders in the sector, which includes signing up to the Race to Zero campaign. And like Victoria previously mentioned, the buildings and construction sector is very critical for climate action. It is responsible for around 40% of global energy-related emissions and around 50% of all extracted materials. And building stock is expected to be doubled in the coming years. And the criticality of the sector is a huge threat to transition to a net zero future if it's not tackled, because building stock is doubling and growth is basically swamping the decarbonization efforts. So it's really important to start taking action now, which is why we set these ambitious targets for 2030 and 2050. And we use this as a guidance to support all the stakeholders in the sector. And more specifically, we have set targets for ourselves depending on different actor types in the sector. So for example, we have set a target of 20% of major architects and engineers by revenue to join Race to Zero, and same for construction and other real estate companies in the sector. And this is the progress that we've made so far. So yeah, all in all, Race to Zero campaign is very important in the decarbonization efforts for the sector. Thank you for listening today. And if you have any questions regarding joining the Race to Zero campaign or setting specific targets, please do reach out to me directly, as well as the wonderful World Green Building Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you for your efforts in all of this, in this wonderful campaign. And this is a friendly reminder for those of you who haven't already. Please do sign the World GBC's Carbon Buildings Commitment, and if you can as well, join the Race to Zero. Next up, I would love to introduce to the stage Amira Ayoub, the head of MENA programs at the World Green Building Council, to tell you all why we're here, the kickoff for the MENA Net Zero Readiness Framework.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now? Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome you again for coming after this long day. I'm very happy to have you all here. Well, you all know that today is the kickoff of our MENA Net Zero Readiness Framework. And when we were thinking about the posters and the campaign and how it's going to start, we were thinking about what does MENA look like? Which picture represents MENA? Is it the skyscrapers or the picture on the right? Which one? On the right? On the left? Both? Yeah, this is what we thought. MENA is the Middle East and North Africa. It's very diverse. So when we speak about the MENA region, it's always there is always differences. And we at World Green Building Council want to envision a sustainable built environment for everyone, everywhere. So if we want to do this, we need to know how we are and where we are and how we can work together to achieve this, respecting the diversity of the region. And as most of you know, we have several green building councils in the MENA region. And again, I would like to welcome all our green building councils here who came especially for our 3 days event for the kickoff of the Readiness Framework. We have Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Palestine, Lebanon, Egypt, Tunisia. And we also have Saudi Arabia and Iraq in the pipeline, so they are coming soon. And we all also know that the population of the MENA region is increasing and it's expected to be doubled, and it's heating twice as fast as a global average. And today, when I was having a conversation before this with Insaf from Tunisia Green Building Council, we were discussing about why are we here? Why are we doing this? I would like to ask you, does anyone here has kids? Okay, most of us. Anyone has a brother or sister with kids? Okay. Anyone has any kid in his life and he Victoria was just speaking about our whole life carbon targets in the year 2030 and the year 2050. 2030 is less than 7 years now. And the kids in our lives, it's about their future. It's about how they are going to exist on this planet. So we are not talking here about if you didn't join us, you are going to be a follower later on. You are not going to be a leader today. You will follow. I'm not talking about this. And I'm not talking about that this is a trend. You should be there. I'm talking about the existence, our existence and our children's existence on this planet. So again, if we relate it to the concept of net zero from that perspective, I think that we all will be much more engaged in the conversation. While, as Natalie shared the survey at the beginning, we are all aware about the concept itself. And I would like you please to scan this code. It's about the challenges and the opportunities that we have in the MENA region. I would like, the first question is about the challenges. What challenges do we have? What are the biggest challenges we have? What is making this conversation difficult in the region? Are we all experts? Do we still need to invite others to learn about this? What are our biggest goals or challenges? Awareness, regulation, water, finance, budget, awareness. The bigger the word, the more people wrote it. Government support, fossil fuels, financing transition, education, local resources, transportation, baseline knowledge gaps, supply chain, governments, policies, standardizations, baseline, war, lack of legislation, education again and again and again, lack of knowledge. Oh my God, we have lots of challenges. It's moving so fast. That's why we are here, because we all know that we have challenges, and we know that we have leaders right here with us in this room who understand how to solve this. The second question is about the opportunities. I think it's still running. So our biggest challenges are actions, regulations, education. I love the word action, because that's why we transformed. We usually in the MENA region have an annual Congress, and this year we decided to transform how our Congress is going to look like. So instead of having a linear conversation, we decided to create a circular conversation. So we will have a workshop on the 2nd of March with our Green Building Councils, regional partners, net zero collaborators, to understand how we are going to work together, how we are going to collaborate together to figure this out. If we can go to the second question, which is, what are the opportunities that we have in the MENA region? What do you see as the biggest opportunity for achieving net zero? Is to inspire others, to have innovation on the table, investment, youth inclusion, impact sunlight, save money. I think creating a business case is very important for the region. Thinking about the future, young population, environment, taking care of our environment, sustainable future. Data analysis. We have lack of data. I think that we need lots of data. This is so much required to move from there. Youth collaboration, synergy, leadership, impact. Youth, I think it's our biggest word. We have youth here, and I'm happy that they will be leading the movement. Sometimes it's a bit challenging to convince others, so it's better to go to younger generation and convince them, and they will work on it. Impact, leadership. Okay, so again, we have lots of challenges and we have lots of opportunities. And when we were thinking about how we can all work together, again, as I told you, we wanted to create a space for us all to work together. Our Green Building Councils representing our voice, our private sector, we have leaders from our private sector, from our regional partners and net zero collaborators. And I would also like to celebrate today that we have a fourth regional partner. We don't have their logo yet on our banner, but today we are celebrating joining a fourth regional partner with us, who are AESG. I would like to welcome them all. Okay. So what happened is that our Asia Pacific region last year tried to figure out how we can fill in the gap between the challenges that we have and the barriers and what we have on the ground. So Joy, we have Joy here, the head of Asia Pacific region, started to work with the Asia Pacific region last year on creating the Asia Pacific Net Zero Readiness Framework. And from there, as you can see here, this framework started to see how we have key elements and how we can understand what we already have and how we can envision our road towards achieving net zero, recognizing all the gaps and the challenges and seeing how we can all work together to achieve our climate action goal for halving the emission for the built environment by the year 2030 and the total decarbonization of the built environment by the year 2050. And this year we have several meetings and workshops. The first one is this week. We have our first workshop on the 2nd of March, and we will meet again at Q2 alongside the Emirates GBC Green Building Congress that will happen on the 8th of June. And in Q3, we will have our third meeting aligned with our World Green Building Week, and all our work will be presented at COP28. Again, we are so happy that we have all our GBC's regional partners, net zero collaborators working hand in hand. And this is an invitation for you to take action. Today, we just don't want you to leave. We have something for everyone. That's why we encourage you all to scan this QR code. You can also have it here. Scan this QR code, you will have the option to sign the net zero carbon building commitment, to join the race to zero, to partner with your local green building council. And you will have lots of options and opportunities to work with us on our circular roundtables. So again, we are so happy to have you here today, and we would love to work with you again and again in the near future. Thank you so much, and I'm so happy also to introduce the host Green Building Council, Emirates Green Building Council, and our regional partners to take you through their journey for advancing net zero in the region. I would like to introduce Mohammed Goma from Emirates GBC. Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you, everyone.
Can you hear me? All right, perfect. So we switch this off. It's not okay. That's all. Let's put it here. So Abdul Latif, the director, was supposed to be here, but he got some last-minute circumstances that I had to jump in. So I'm not as prepared as Amira or as Victoria or as Nadine, and my speech will be much shorter. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. I just want to thank you all for coming today. I know it's midweek after work, and you just chose to be in the traffic of Dubai to come and see us. So thank you very much for that. And I want to introduce Emirates Green Building Council for you. So for those people that don't know us, Emirates Green Building Council was established in 2006. And basically, our vision and mission was to see the UAE as a leader in the sustainable built environment. And we wanted to act as a hub for collaboration and excellence in sustainability in the built environment. Net zero was a big thing on our agenda since few years. So the first thing we did for net zero was not actually net zero, was near zero, defining near zero buildings, a report that was issued in 2017. And then from under the Net Zero Center of Excellence. And then from there, it was our top priority to promote and push net zero in the region and in the built environment here. So our 2018, 2019, and 2022 and 2023, all of our congresses since then, except the COVID years, are talking about net zero. And we will continue to do this for this year as well. We do want your involvement. We do so we will have our Congress in June. And I think by June, I hope to see some some things that we could present in our Congress from the Net Zero Collaborators group. And I think that's it. If you have any questions, it was very brief, very short. I was not prepared for this. But if you have any questions, and if I remember anything that I forgot, I will just jump in here and say it. But otherwise, please find me here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, and thank you, Amira, for walking us through the MENA Net Zero Readiness Framework, and Mohammed for jumping in and saving the day and letting us all know a bit more about the work that our host GBC, Emirates GBC, has been doing. Now we are delighted to be partnering with our regional partners, two of which will be speaking tonight. First, we have Balsam Nehme, the Head of Sustainability at DAR. Please welcome to the stage, Balsam.
Thank you. Is this working? Can you hear me? Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. I'll just start by playing a very short video here. Great. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Balsam Nami, and I'm the Head of Sustainability for DAR. What you've seen here is a bit of what we believe are the problems that we're facing nowadays, and the reason why we committed to getting our operations to net zero, to influence our clients, to influence our communities, to influence our people. I'll just start by telling you who DAR is. For those of you that know, it's just a reminder and a refresher that even with such large operations, you can still commit to net zero. And for those of you that don't know us, it's a small introduction to who we are. So we've been in business since 1956. We are an architecture and engineering consultancy that's operating out of the Middle East and Africa with locations in Beirut, Cairo, London, Pune, and Amman. Mainly, we have about 52 offices that we operate in the Middle East and Africa. We have about 7,800 staff. So that does give you a bit of sense of the scale of our operations and our carbon footprint that we're committing to offset by 2030. Our projects span from buildings, transportation, cities, water and environment to project management, so all the way from design into construction. And our services are about planning, economics, design, smart city, and sustainability is covering all of this together.
So what have we done so far in terms of sustainability? And what has our journey looked like? First, we committed to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in 2018, and we've been reporting against the UN SDGs since then on an annual basis. What this means, it means that our projects will have to align with the UN SDGs as much as possible. And then we went on a journey to get our operations to net zero by 2030. And that was with Victoria and the team here, signed in 2021 to get to a target of net zero by 2030. So what this means, it means there are 5 stages to that. First, we commit, which we already did in 2021 by COP26. Second, we disclose, which is what we've done, our carbon footprint. Third, and that's where we are now, is we're acting, which means that we have identified our decarbonization roadmap to get every single office to net zero by 2030. Obviously, that needs to be verified. So we have a third party engaged to verify this for us. And then what we're doing in parallel is advocating. And Victoria has mentioned about advocacy. And advocacy for us is not only about operational energy, but it's also about embodied energy. So how we can influence our clients and our projects into looking at low carbon solutions for the materials that they are incorporating. This is a bit of the roadmap that we're looking at. And here you can see that within our community, we have more than 500 green professionals across the DAR offices. And we've delivered so far more than hundreds of green certified and sustainable projects across the Middle East and starting in Africa significantly as well. Because data is very important, and that's one of the things that was also brought up previously, I think, by Amira. We also partner with digital and innovation to make sure that any data that we have, any action that we take, any KPI that we implement is actually properly measured and quantified to assess how this really influences our roadmap to net zero. Digital twin here is incorporated into our Dar Cairo offices. And you can see that with the platform that we have, we're able to understand every single measure that we are implementing and the impact that this has on our utility bills, whether in terms of electricity, in terms of renewable energy generation, in terms of water, in terms of waste, and others. Innovation and thought leadership are very important pieces of our work because we believe that it is through the thought leadership part that we're able to really collaborate and partner up and influence when it comes to net zero. One of the most recent thought leadership pieces that we've worked on in collaboration with the World Green Building Council is the Beyond Buildings report that I do invite you all to read. What this report is about is that we have a lot of focus on buildings, and that's very important, but it's also an integrated approach that we'll need to be looking at. And this approach is about looking at the buildings and the infrastructure together, not in silos. And specifically, this report walks you through what it means to be designing for a whole built environment that's driven towards net zero, not just a single standalone building that's rather at net zero specifically. And the way we do thought leadership is through academic collaboration, but it's also through sector partnership. And that's why we have been regional members with the World Green Building Council last year and this year again as well. So not only net zero collaborators, but also regional partners to really bring that influence out there and to really see what we can do for our region and for our people. So our collaborations and partnerships were really very strong, and we did note a lot of influence at COP27. And we know that we will be able also to bring a lot of influence here in the UAE ahead of COP28. In terms of our clients, so we take all of this, all of those solutions that we test ourselves, we take it to our clients because we have to walk the talk. And because those solutions should be able to inform the clients that we serve. That's the minimum that they deserve from us. So what this means to our clients, it means that whenever we speak about efficient design, whenever we speak about passive strategies, whenever we speak about active strategy incorporation, carbon footprint reduction, resource optimization, renewable energy, and the whole drive to net zero? How are we quantifying this? How are we validating this? And how are we really making this happen? And having said that, my last slide here closes with how to set a vision for COP28, how to take the net zero vision into COP28, how to really influence with all of the work that we're doing, our partners, our community, how to collaborate with people around here on different topics. We have here listed just a few topics, but we're open for any ideas that would really get us to get our built environment to net zero. And this collaboration is really something that we're looking forward to, whether it's sector specific, whether it's about aviation, it's about healthcare, or whether it's just the whole built environment as we did for COP27 specifically. And also if it's about operational energy or embodied energy and the importance of low embodied energy in material selection and the energy transition, lastly, all are topics that we are looking forward to collaborate to make sure that as a community here in the Middle East, we're able to really influence and we're able to drive our countries and their vision to net zero. And that's it for us. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Belsam, and thank you to Dar for the inspiring thought and action leadership that you are doing for advancing net zero in the MENA region. And we are delighted to have with us today Ms. Katerina Uherova-Aspani, who is representing AESG, our newest regional partner. Please welcome to the stage, Katerina.
%, can you hear me? Yeah. 40% of the global carbon emissions. That's the share of buildings. That's a number that most of the people know. But that is another number. If you look at the whole life cycle of not just buildings, but infrastructure as a whole, the whole number for buildings and infrastructure is more than 80%, almost close to 90% of the global carbon emissions. So that's the space that we all work in, right? And that's the challenge that we are all faced with. And everyone is asking why, what, and how we can influence carbon footprint of buildings, communities, countries, governments. And that's what we do at AESG. We are a specialized technical consultancy. We serve sectors that are asset heavy, sectors that have big carbon footprint. They might be in the real estate sector, but increasingly, actually, they are in many other sectors of our economy here in the Middle East. Hospitality, tourism, healthcare, education, manufacturing, oil and gas, that actually has huge built footprint here in this region. So we work with them. We started about 12 years ago with a very simple service, review of buildings design for sustainability. But today we have 8 different specialized technical divisions that work with new buildings, but also existing buildings on enhancing their sustainability environmental credentials. We have assisted more than 1,000 landmark projects, not just in this region. Today we have offices in UAE, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and UK. But we are also proud of the fact that we are a very gender balanced organization. I am one testament to it. But also we are very privileged because sustainability is a field that is attracting a very balanced pool of candidates across genders, but also nationalities. You can see that we have more than 40 different nationalities working in our offices. And this very balanced gender ratio and a lot of diversity in the nationalities is actually helping us to deliver better projects. We are growing. I mean, we are not really updating this number often enough. We are getting close to 250 employees across all of our offices. So what do we do about net zero specifically? We have been early signatories to the World Green Building Council's Net Zero Carbon Buildings commitment. We are committed to delivering net zero pathway on all our new design projects. But also recently here in UAE, we have joined as one of the corporate partners of the UAE Net Zero 2050 commitment, where we are working across our own supply chain. So with companies that we serve, but also other companies that are in our ecosystem to enhance their net zero credentials. And we do that by delivering our own services. We deliver strategies, roadmaps, and then practical implementation advice on net zero that spans not just built environment, but also waste, energy, management of water and other resources. We also have corporate social responsibility activities where we work with local universities. We deliver thought leadership. And of course, we are very excited to be now joining forces with the World Green Building Council regional partnership. We have been active participants to the Emirates Green Building Council and many other local initiatives that are contributing to enhancing the overall net zero objectives, but also sustainability in the region. And one of the landmarks of what we do is what we call an ESG Academy. It's a double commitment to providing thought leadership, but also providing education via projects that we deliver, but also via local universities, because we think that, as it was shown in one of the Mentimeters, awareness is one of the biggest barriers that we still have in terms of delivering on net zero commitment here in UAE. So if you would like to be part of our activities, whether via this framework or in other ways, please don't hesitate to contact me or our team. My contact details are here. I will have to leave in a bit because I am a woman, I have a daughter, and she's waiting for me to put her to sleep. But I am available on LinkedIn. Please do connect with me and I would be happy to meet with you one-on-one or in the meetings this week. I will be participating. Thank you very much for giving me this platform and staying connected. And this is really a passion project for me. I was talking to some of you in the room. In 2004, I started with my first job in the European Commission and the Director General for Energy and Transport. And back then, energy efficiency was like a crazy idea. You know, the head of energy efficiency in the European Commission was this guy with a straw hat, riding a bike in the middle of Brussels, and everyone was like, ha ha ha, what is this about? So right now, for people like me who has been working in this field of sustainability, energy efficiency, renewables, it's a bit, our revenge time, but it's very exciting to see that these ideas of how to make our planet, what we do more sustainable is becoming mainstream. And the last call for action, if you know people who are interested in joining forces and are looking for a job, we are constantly hiring, so don't hesitate to reach out about that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. We are also excited to have you partner with us on this journey. And I hope that you won't be having to leave too soon, as we would love to invite all the speakers back on the stage for a quick open discussion for any questions in the room. Thank you all. If we can maybe spot Muhammad, if anyone sees him. Hopefully he'll be able to join us in a bit. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I can bring you a microphone.
Good evening, everybody. I was wondering when Victoria presented, if I'm a signatory on the SBTIs, would that cater for the green building commitments, or do I need to commit also to the green buildings?
Great question. the scope of a commitment under science-based targets is all scopes of your emissions. So that's scopes 1, 2, and 3. And ideally on a 1.5 degree pathway, but possible for a 2 degree pathway by 2050. And what we say at World GBC is that taking action on your buildings by 2030 is going to be complementary to that, because it will help you tackle a huge chunk of your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And we know that some of the technologies and tools for addressing those emissions from your buildings are already possible today. So as part of a science-based target by 2050 or sooner, your action for your buildings by 2030 will help you get there faster. And I guess those who are signatories of both hopefully agree. Hey, Natalie, good job you got trainers on. Right up there.
That's my workout for the day.
I'm Amr Nader from AQ & Co. And my question is regarding the downstream of buildings. You thankfully talked about buildings and how to make the existing building or the new building energy efficient and low carbon footprint from material and being able to recycle. But the downstream, the hard to abate sector, the cement and steel, and the technology of the construction, can we shed some light on that direction? Because if we looked at the building, I think around 70% of what's in the building is coming from cement, steel, and the way we make construction and the ability to recycle the concrete. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, yeah. So it's a great question and something that I wanted to talk about and I forgot when I was making the presentation. It's important to look at the materials, of course, that go into your construction. And it's actually already today one of the, let's say, easier ways how to decarbonize your new build design here in the region. We have done few studies in the context of our projects. And of course, with some increase in CapEx, these materials are more expensive to some extent than the higher carbon footprint materials. You can already get reductions in carbon footprint of your embodied carbon 10 to 30% if you increase, let's say, up to 5% your initial CapEx. So there are some alternatives available that can get you to a lower carbon footprint in terms of your embodied carbon, but we want to get more options in this market, right? Things are happening, right? Some of the big developers here in UAE, the giga projects in Saudi Arabia are looking at these new alternatives, but still we have some more homework to do as an industry here, right? Trying to create more visibility on where the demand will be coming from. And I think when we talk about the MENA readiness framework, these are some of the things that we would like to dig deeper into and provide information to the market about, right? Because right now, from our work, we see there is a bit of this chicken and egg situation, right? The suppliers are like, we want to come, but we don't know where is the demand coming from. And then the clients, they are telling us, oh, we want to build, but if I put an RFP with, big amount of requirement in there for these new alternatives, will I have sufficient amount of supply? So I guess this is why we are here today and why we want to work closer together in MENA region to provide more visibility. And exactly you touch point on this very important topic of different type of alternative material supply that will get us to the net zero in the embodied carbon. Does that answer your question?
To be honest, I didn't mean existing cement and existing steel and existing aluminum and existing glass, those can be green and they are not more expensive than the classical material we have now. And the only way to incorporate the downstream is real estates to define green procurement approaches and state carbon footprint in their build BOM, this will solve the supply demand approach, because suppliers of downstream can produce green material, but we don't find specifiers and buyers that are actually willing to get it.
I may add just one thing here. Also, to your point, that if you look at it from a whole life carbon approach, it would also make the material selection something that people will push for. Because, for example, if you take the example of a shading device or just a glazing assembly, right? The first thing that we think of is that if I put that shading device, how much is it going to save to me in terms of operational carbon? But how much will it cost me to get that concrete if it's a conventional concrete? If it's not a green concrete as you're referring to it, to get it, to construct it, to install it, and then to demolish it. So once you solve it and really present it, let's say, from a whole life carbon approach, like what's the balance between your operational versus your embodied, what it took to get that concrete and put it, I'm just using concrete as an example, then maybe then your clients will be more and more convinced to invest in green solutions in terms of materials as well. Or trying at least, yeah. And by the way, if there's an opportunity for really looking at the material library in the UAE and the KSA and the MENA market, I think that that's a great opportunity for all of us to collaborate. I think that there's a big gap there, and that it's a great opportunity to be speaking about materials.
Hi, Omar from Schneider Electric. So I have two questions, if you don't mind. The first question is regarding the benchmarking analysis, which is a very familiar topic to the people here from the energy efficiency background. So we use this a lot to for a facility to compare against like similar facilities. There is in the Emirates Green Building Council the study that was made for malls and for schools and for I cannot remember, but are you aware of
Hotels?
hotels? Yes. Yeah. So this was actually one of my questions. You've spoken about diversity. I see only one man. So are you aware of any studies that are coming, or your Emirates Green Building Council, or with collaboration of the World Green Building Council on future studies?
Yeah. So we are working on updating that study. Actually, we're collaborating with some people that are already present here in the room that I see, because that study was published in 2019. And then there is the consumption from that now, like devices and buildings are a bit more efficient. So we're expecting some kind of change. And we are working on updating it. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have it.
And are you collaborating with any educational institutes on, or how does the progress of, how does the process of making these studies usually go?
So it depends on the studies. We're open to collaboration with anyone, really. We work a lot with actually, in fact, our last publication that was just published 2 weeks ago was in collaboration with Herod University. So we're open to working. We work a lot with the World GPC, as well as our members and other NGOs and education institutes. So we are very open for collaboration.
Okay, thank you. So my second question is, I was in a conference a few weeks ago, and one of the panelists mentioned a study that is a little bit concerning, that 93% of the corporates won't be able to achieve the goals that were the targets on 2030 and 2050. So as an individual and as a corporate, what your thoughts on this, and what are these remaining 7% are doing right that the rest are not doing right?
Yeah, so there are definitely signals of change heading in the right direction, as Nadeem mentioned. I've also seen a report in the last couple of weeks from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development that tells us that we can halve emissions from construction projects today. We can already achieve a more than 50% reduction in upfront embodied carbon compared with what we're calling for by 40% reduction by 2030. So there's a lot of studies out there that's telling us that it actually is possible to achieve it if you're applying the right concepts and approaches and questions to our projects. I think we're seeing that the technology exists. We're seeing the tools emerging, the data helping us to, somebody mentioned benchmarks, the more data that we can share from projects and experiences that we're having on projects, the better, because that helps us create those benchmarks that others can compare against. We need to be able to quantify what good looks like in order to have those targets, right? But we also know that it's starting to be not such a cost challenge. I mean, again, it'd be interesting to know from you guys and your projects, but we're starting to see data that actually, particularly from the operational side, you can achieve high levels of energy efficiency, high levels of energy performance, electrify the building and tap into renewable energy with not much of a cost premium. And we're starting to see that not just in Europe, but popping up as examples around the world. So for me, it's, sort of worrying about not achieving those targets comes from the lack of knowledge that Amira mentioned was popping up on the screen earlier, because we have the tools, we have the technologies, we have those that are working to implement the solutions. What we really need is that scaling of those solutions and to really tap into that knowledge. So I'm more inspired by the WBCSD report and less worried about the challenges of not achieving it, because that's what we're here to do. We need to have these rooms full of people who haven't yet embarked on that journey yet, and help them understand how they can achieve those targets, because that's what these guys do day in, day out, right? Any thoughts on?
Yeah, I think one thing that is consistently appearing in my work is that organizations that actually do things, those that are in the 7%, I think the percentage is a bit higher than that, but those that do things and that succeed are the organizations where the leaders are committed to taking an action, and that commitment to take an action is not based on a business case, but it's based on a belief, a passion that this is something that I need to do and is right? So we have the technology, we even have sometimes the business case, not always, but sometimes we do. But what is very, very important is to have leaders that are passionate about this and that believe that this is something that they need to do. It's their legacy. And I see more and more of those leaders. I mean, those definitely leaders in the organizations that are collaborators, that are, partners in these initiatives are some examples of those, but there are others as well. And, with the COP28 here in UAE, I think that's one of the biggest sort of competitive advantages that we have today, that we will have more of those leaders that are willing to just say, okay, this is something that we're gonna do.
I want to add on this too. We need leaders and believers, like Katarina said, and we also need to know what we are working on.
Yeah.
Do we all know each
Yeah.
other? Do we all understand that some of us has solutions?
Yeah.
Do we know that we can help each other and work together to accelerate a net zero movement in the region? This is why, or here comes a net zero readiness framework, creating that space for all of us to learn from each other and to learn from the leaders and to join the conversation and sign a commitment and join the race to zero. So we need to see what each one of us is doing and learn from each other. So I think this is the core goal of the net zero readiness framework.
Hello.
This
This is Summer from Gensler. My question is to you, Amira. As the head of MENA program, I'm just wondering about your view in terms of the balance between, the MENA region, to your point, is very diverse. We've got countries who have, to a certain extent, they're very well established, very well developed. And then we've got, the North African region, that specifically Africa in general is going to be the hub. It's going to be growing heavily in the next 50 years. So how do you see the road to net zero and how it balances out? How do you see the growth and how it relates to these goals? Because, you know, change and growth needs to happen fast in the African continent. And a lot of these economies are they're just starting their process, and they might not have the resources to employ efficiency measures, to look into net zero with all of, you know, the costs that associated with it. So how do you think from a building professional perspective, we can help them get to that path faster, considering they're gonna build way, way more than what we're building now?
Thank you for your question. I think if we imagine someone standing right here and he wants to be up there without watching or without seeing the steps, it's going to be very challenging. So we will always have the two separate pictures of the MENA region, where we have countries where they are committed to achieve net zero by the year 2050, and other countries who are not even aware about what we are talking about. So that's why we want to create this conversation, to see the steps, to understand that, okay, we are standing here and we understand what's coming next and how we can support, for example, our GBCs, understand how they can support their government or their private sector, to see the steps, to understand the gaps, to know that they have to do this and this and that to go upstairs. So it's all about this discussion and conversation. If I created two separate scenarios, one in the UAE and Saudi Arabia and another one in other countries in the MENA region who are not aware about this topic, then we will never go there faster. To go there faster, we need to sit together and understand what did people came up with, to understand from the private sector that they have solutions. They have like case studies and pilot projects that they are working on, and we can all learn from that to see that, okay, we have a gap related to data. So we need data. Who is going to work on this? Some others are working on the material sector and the industries. So they have solutions. I know that we have today ACube and Co. They have very good knowledge in this, and I'm sure that they will support this movement. Do we all know each other? Do we all know that we have the solutions? So that's why we wanted to create this conversation. To be honest, I'm not sure at this moment what we are going to come up with. We have the Asia Pacific Net Zero Readiness Framework, and we have the key elements, and it's very easy to adapt it to MENA, but we don't want to have something and follow it. We need to create that space again for everyone to say what is appropriate for the region, how this is going to be aligned, and how we are going to advance this together. Thank you. This is a very good question. This is what we are going to figure out after tomorrow. We are going to see who is missing in the room. Where is the government? Who is missing? If you saw the key elements. At the Net Zero Readiness Framework that we have at the moment for Asia Pacific, we have the mindset. The mindset, how we can change people's mindset, how we can increase awareness, education, how we can create a public demand. Residential is about public demand. If I understand that this is important for me, I will go and ask for it, and this will transform how our residential sector will look like. This is my point of view.
I mean, I have something interesting about this to say. In one of my past projects, we've done some research around behavioral sciences application on the topic of energy and water savings in UAE, in one of the Emirates. And what we found out, and this is the general public, right? The residential that you're talking about, we've been looking a bit at the evolution of what's happening with the public opinions. And what is very interesting is that it has become socially desirable to be seen as someone who is environmentally friendly. And at the same time, it's not yet to the level where individuals would be ready to commit effort and money to do something about it. It's a lot about appearances, right? So that's the hurdle that we need to cross, is to bring it from the socially desirable perspective to, okay, I'm gonna pay more money, or I'm gonna take an effort to save, let's say, on energy and water. So I'm totally aligned, but that's exactly like one of the things probably that we will tackle through the readiness framework, is how can we use some of these, we've heard about digital, there are behavioral sciences, of course there is government and so on, but the modern contemporary tools that we can use to nudge people towards net zero. It's a great point,
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. First, I'd like to compliment all the organizers of event for getting all of us together today. My name is Sam, and I actually want to add on to what the gentleman said and also give a response to that. I wear multiple hats. I represent a builder, a facility management company, an environmental services company, and multiple activities which we do. And in the race to net zero, we have come up with a very good starting block. We have our own real estate where we wanted to reduce our carbon footprint. And we've done all the regular stuff. So we wanted to do something really radical. So we have collaborated with a company in Masdar, and we have done direct air carbon capture from inside the built environment. And by removing the carbon dioxide, the VOC, and the humidity from inside the built environment, we have been able to reduce the dependence of external air or ambient air which has to come inside the building. We've installed this unit in our own property and registered a saving of more than 30% on the electricity bill, improved the air quality inside the building, and won multiple awards, including the Emirates Green Building Award. Now, we did this for our own properties, and we would like to know how we can all collaborate with the different councils, the consultants, because if we all collaborate, then we will be able to reduce the cost of the equipment. Because when I go to a manufacturer and I say that I want 5 units, the pricing which they give is substantially different than when I order 50 units or 500 units. So I would definitely like to know how we can connect and collaborate on this business. And like us, there are multiple entities. When I meet other builders, other associates, they've done some excellent work. And I guess if those work which individuals have already done, if it can be highlighted in such forums like this, then others can learn, and we can all collaborate in making this world a better place to live.
Thank you for sharing this inspiring solution. I think you have the opportunity. We have all our green building councils with us today. So it would be awesome if you can have a chat with them and see how we can move forward with this. But thank you so much. I always feel happy when I hear about something happening or going on as a solution. So thank you for sharing this so much.
Excuse me, a few questions on the main topic of the event, the net zero readiness framework. If we can talk about some details about that, the timeline, the approach, the alignment to SBTI, the expected real estate guidelines that are coming later in the year, and the members of the working committee. I think we did discuss that we are missing the government, for example, but also another question pointed that we are missing the steel manufacturers and ready mix and the concrete people. So will you consider all of these in the committees? What's your approach to get these people on board and the expected timeline? Thank you.
I think Natalie can help you answering this question. Natalie, please.
Yes, sure. Hi. So this event is actually the kickoff. We're hoping to hear from you. Actually, what the vision is. We can tell you what to do. We could have solved this yesterday, but that's not the intention here. The intention is actually to hear from you, from the insights that you have, from the experience that you have in the industry, and what's working, what's not working. We wanted to learn from you the challenges, the opportunities, because this is a conversation that we should all be having. So these guidelines are going to be set in a more organic approach, and that's why we're hoping that you will partner with us if you haven't already. We're opening up the conversation or the space for conversation and the workshops and dialogue to actually make this happen and to make this a homegrown effort rather than a top-down approach. Our head of Asia Pacific programs to speak on this.
Please, everyone, can we please thank you to Joy because she came from Asia. She came from Singapore just to support us. Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy.
So again, I'm very happy to have you as well. And also we also have any access to this opportunity. So we really hope more and more the manufacturer and companies join the MENA community to develop this framework altogether. Very Joy. I just wanted to add a little bit because you mentioned specifically the SBTI for buildings expert advisory group work, right? So it's really useful that there's that program and that this framework is due to publish its results at the end of the year, but we're due to have a public consultation in, I think it's Q2 this year. So first of all, it'd be great to get your input on that if you're not already involved. And secondly, you know, World Green Building Council is involved in that sort of development and evolution of the guidance to make sure that anything we create at a global level or regional and hopefully local level by the Green Building Councils is aligned to some of those initiatives, because so many of our members are expected to report into or are signed up to those. So it's in our, you know, best interest to make sure that we are aligned. In fact, those MENA GBCs who are in Advancing Net Zero, we actually have the team from SBTI for Buildings presenting on our next steering committee to get their feedback in, because we know that the alignment is really necessary. But the purpose of the frameworks is the readiness piece, right? It's about taking the concepts that we know at a global level, understanding what the synergies are with the different initiatives, and creating the guidance that produces scalability. Because the one big potential or the one big opportunity for the regional projects like Asia Pacific and like MENA is that it works with all of the Green Building Councils and all of their members in a way that, you know, the Science-Based Targets Expert Advisory Group is very specific and, you know, a very small group of people. And so we get the chance to feed into it. And then hopefully the results of that process will feed back into the work that gets delivered by the GBCs. So we're all one big happy green building family, including other organizations as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm Raji Hattar. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Aramex. I chair the Jordan Green Building Council and the Regional Green Building Council as well. I want to elaborate on the point of why 7% only and not the 93%. There are lots of challenges on the ground. The first one is that not all leaders are convinced. The second thing is that when sustainability in general is presented, it's not presented as a business case rather than presented as Something to do because it's good, something to do because, maybe regulation would come later on. Anything related to environment, any project to implement environment has a direct positive impact on your bottom line from the first invoice you receive from electricity, water, anything that is in that domain. So if the case is presented to the management of any company, to the owners of any company as a business case that has direct impact, 3 years, 4 years or so. We installed solar farm in Dubai 7 years back. The return on investment was 7 years. 2 years after, the return on investment is 3.5 years. It's moving extremely fast. Amazingly, I'm doing something in Dublin now, in Ireland. Return on investment in a solar farm in Ireland is 4 years. It used to be 11 years. So we need to present ourselves as a business and not something that we do because, sustainability and green and everybody will look at us like that. The other challenges is that technology is not always available. So it's not there, everything that you're looking for in some countries, you do not find it. We mentioned at the beginning that I'm not sure it was 70 or more that countries that do not even have building codes. So how do you expect them to go green if they don't have building code for steel and for the cement? So that's another area that prevents companies from moving forward. The most important thing that would be impacting businesses to move into green and to move into net zero is the carrot and the stick. If we feel tomorrow that there's going to be a carbon tax on electricity in the UAE, trust me, everybody will go energy efficiency. People, the minute you hit their pockets, the minute they start moving and implementing projects. And we saw that in other countries across the globe. The same goes for fuel. The same goes for anything that is related to green. So regulations, partnerships, and the colleague up there mentioned partnerships. Amira said where the government is. Unfortunately, most of the governments worldwide did not talk yet to the private sector to tell them, listen, guys, we committed to 2030 to cut 24% of our emissions. What are you doing about it? So, and we don't want, governments to come to us 2027 and say, hey, you have 3 years to cut 50% of your emissions. And that's then the disaster happened. So there are lots of, challenges and opportunities at the same time that we can take to promote and to move this forward. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing to Raj's point on that 7% and 93%? And it's out of personal experience. So what we've noticed that really will get that 7% to increase significantly is the youth. And when you asked, I think that question, there was that big youth, right? So that's what's going to influence us. What we noticed is that talent retention and people want to work in organizations that are promoting sustainability. That are not only selling sustainability, but are being sustainable themselves. And we do get asked a lot on awareness and sustainability. It's our staff, starting with our youngest, most junior staff, they're really asking us to really go down that path. And I think that that's going to be influential on all of the, hopefully, much more than 7% that was raised by the gentleman.
Thank you. We will be taking one last question, but I urge you to continue this conversation afterwards.
Hello, everyone. Insaf bin Othman Hamrouni from Tunisia Green Building Council. We have a particular situation because we are at the same time part of the MENA regional network and at the same time from the Africa regional network. I think that some of my questions have been answered, but just as a, I will go back to the comment about Africa and also about the housing and sector. Of course, there is a lot of things that have been happening the last 10 years. Didn't happen before. We all understand that we need a leapfrog, in particular for Africa and our regions, as we basically mainly 70% of the building stock is yet to be built. And of course, looking to our context and in particular in Africa, the youth that will come in the next generation are today making great advancement and innovation. There are a lot have been done, recently, especially networks. Hubs today, it's very easy to approach even a whole network of all the 54 African countries, leaders, decision makers. We are sharing in different languages the different research. Recent report 2022 as well about, the net decarbonization of the building stock. Something that also needs to be addressed is the, let's say, the auto construction, which some of you will understand, like the informal sector, which is also behind it is an informal economy. And this also brought up not only challenges, but also solutions when we really looking in deep about the practices that are kind of, we call it the informal knowledge that is being developed. And today, of course, we see that there is a change in the mindset that is operating. While we all understand that there is a need for leadership, there is a need of outreaching, there is a need of sharing more the knowledge and mobilization, and in particular, the civil society and the CBOs, because they are very, very active and they have this kind of, motor of this local economy, circularity, etc. So just to give a figure, 50% of the housing stock is informal. It's built by the people. The housing, for example, strategy in Tunisia in 2015, they have been basically saying as a message, we failed. We failed because in reality, the speed of this building, it affords so incredible ways of responding to the urgent needs of people that is fastest than any other, formal, let's say, economy. But what happened in return is like we are now developing different strategies, also changing roles, like designers became more facilitators. The government became enabler through the, legal framework, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's basically, we take as well these framework and we try to contextualize them to this. So they are today, and in particular through the internet and a lot of database that's existing, and we have more and more understanding, especially with artificial intelligence today, that give us scenarios of development. So we are basically in some region able today to see where the growth will operate. And of course, as being architect and urban planner, there are new emergence of new, let's say, professionals of, let's say, mobilization, and these professionals who are much more in the ESG also framework, that they are trying to implement it. I mean, informality is really there. I mean, if I go back to Amira's photos, there is a third photo that is missing, and we all see it very clearly. And this one, we should in particular see how we will be able to bridge the gap and to have that leapfrog, because knowing today everybody can understand each other's language, and we need to vulgarize such things, we need to simplify them more, and we need also to understand or to have a new definition of economy, because this economy, it's really existing in Africa and it has a huge market in the field. So thank you very much.
No comments from the speakers? Sounds good. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for all of your thoughts, your perspectives, and thank you for being here and for showing up in the middle of the week in the evening and sharing your time with us. And thank you to Mashreq Bank for hosting us at this beautiful venue. So we invite you to continue this conversation. We have some snacks, some drinks, some juices afterwards outside. And thank you again to all of our speakers for these inspiring thoughts, and we hope that you enjoyed your time here. And please, if you haven't already, scan the QR code and see how you can partner with us. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. I'll see you on Thursday. Okay.